Thanks everyone for joining. We'll get started now. I want to thank you all for taking time off your busy day and joining our Fireside Chat today with Sunder Pillai from ISG, Hiral Chandrana from Mastek, and Dr. Mark Chrystal from Netail.ai. Today's session is going to be for about 30 minutes, and we have carved about 15 minutes after that for a specific Q&A. You can use the Q&A feature or the chat feature of this webinar to send in your questions. We wanted to make this as interactive as we can. With that, there's a couple of housekeeping rules that I wanted to go over. First and foremost, this session is being recorded, so we can make it available later on for you to review. Second, we have intentionally put everybody on mute to make sure that we avoid any unwanted noise and avoid any disruptions in the session. And again, if you have any questions, please do send in through a chat, and I'm more than happy to help with any technical difficulties as well. So with that, I would like to introduce Sunder. Sunder is a director and practice leader of retail and CPG from ISG. Sunder, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Palak. Appreciate the opportunity. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. A lot has changed in the last couple of years as we saw the world emerge out of the shadows of the pandemic. We saw a lot of evolving normal. We called it the new normal, the next normal, and what have you. Retail and CPG continue to be at the forefront of innovation, agility, and change. Shifting customer demand, altered spend patterns, last mile delivery challenges, reimagined workforce paradigms continue to be at the forefront of all our conversations. And now, if that was not enough, we now see retailers under immense margin pressure, closely watching inflation, interest rate, recalibrating the spend and the cost structures, continuously looking at every possible lever to improve customer intimacy now more than ever. Which leads us to this question. How do you maximize your sales potential with real-time competitive intelligence to drive profitable growth and provide unmatched convenience to shoppers to improve loyalty, build relationship, last but most importantly, drive sales? So I know that's a lot to cover. And to demystify that and beyond, we have two distinguished panelists alongside here with me. I have Dr. Mark Chrystal, CEO Netail, and Mr. Hiral Chandrana, Global CEO Mastek. So without much ado, let me request Dr. Mark and Hiral to introduce themselves, and we'll take it from there. Dr. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Sunder. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Chrystal. My background is 23 years as a retail executive, where I've led all or parts of every major function of a retail organization. My academic background is in applied analytics, especially related to consumer behavior. And about 6 years ago, I made the move from inline retail into AI-based software development. And I'm now the CEO of Netail, an AI-focused SaaS business that specifically targets value creation for retail and CPG businesses. And I'd just like to say thanks very much for inviting me to participate today.
Thank you, Dr. Mark.
All right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm thrilled to have this conversation. Looking forward to the interactive discussion as well. My name is Hiral. I lead Mastek globally. Mastek is roughly about 6,000 people. We do a couple of things really, really well. One of them is digital experience, commerce, and digital engagement. And so that's the topic for today. 30 years of experience in the industry. Probably about half of that has been spending time with retail and CPG clients. And looking forward, Sunder and Mark.
Awesome. Welcome, Mark and Hiral. We are excited to have you here today. So thank you for taking your time. I'm sure you have some amazing stories and insights to share with us. And for the audience, we would love to keep this extremely conversational. So please use the chat window to share your questions. I promise to sprinkle that in. And since we have a lot to cover, let's jump straight into it. So let me start with Dr. Mark. Tell us a little bit about Netail for the audience who don't know what Netail is and what you all do. So take
Sure.
us home from there.
That would be great. So I think what I'm going to do is use props, if that's okay. So I'm going to bring up some slides, and hopefully that will help me tell the story as well. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see this. So Netail's really focused on three key things at the end of the day for retail and CPG: increasing the visits, increasing sales, increasing profits, and doing that through a turnkey AI model that gets businesses really up and running fast with really cutting edge and impactful AI solutions. Where we're really focused is actually thinking about the customer journey and actually using AI to create differentiation for retail and CPGs at each stage of the journey. And so we think about the journey in three steps. The first is this attract phase. So it's the top of the funnel. It's when consumers are in this kind of research and browsing phase. And what we've seen increasingly, and it's now become the dominant way of shopping, is that consumers now do most of their research and browsing digitally. They're doing it online, and then they're going into stores to buy. And there's an acronym for this called ROBO, which is research online, buy offline. And so what we've done is we've recognized that trend. COVID and the pandemic certainly was a catalyst for the acceleration of this trend. We've realized that the retailers are really now struggling in this new dynamic where consumers are now effectively making their purchase decisions on sites like Google and Amazon, and you've got to win, and you basically got to win them there or lose them there before they'll ever come to your store or to your site. And so we've built an AI-powered tool set that helps retailers really optimize in that space, understand who they're competing with in that space, and actually win more customers and get them to the site and the stores. Once they're there, that competitive data set that we need to actually attract them in the first place and provide that visibility, we found actually is really helpful for converting customers as well. So there's lots of studies that show about 2/3 of consumers are actually doing price comparisons almost at the point of sale, whether they're in store or on a site. They're bringing up the phone, they're doing price comparisons. And so having that competitive data in your pricing decisions is really important. And so we built a solution in that space. And then we've also seen loyalty declining over the years. And again, the COVID pandemic has been a catalyst for this. And so we built better tools using machine learning and AI to really identify the purchase triggers for consumers, and actually effectively the triggers that get or the predictive behaviors that indicate a consumer's likely to purchase, and also the predictive behaviors that indicate they're actually churning, they're going to leave your brand, so that you can actually proactively talk to those customers and increase spend and increase the ability to retain those consumers. So I said a lot, and so there's a lot of like, well, so what? And so that the so what is actually the results, right? So like, what are the results that we've been generating from this? And so I just want to kind of go through a few of those. So with our real-time market insights solution, we call it competitive insights. And this is really enabling retailers to optimize their pricing and assortments at that point where the consumer's doing the research and browse. We found that we can actually boost traffic by as much as 44% to the retailer through the stores and site. And this isn't by spending more marketing dollars, it's actually by understanding how the products are positioned, where they're suboptimally positioned versus the competitors, and actually making those adjustments ideally in real time. As I mentioned before, we bring in this competitive data and intelligence to the pricing decision as well. And we've seen a significant boost in profits through that capability. AI is really good also for spotting opportunities in the assortment, and inventory productivity is a particular pain point. And so we have a solution that actually identifies where inventory is unproductive, which elements of the assortment are unproductive, and actually then where you should take that investment and put it to make it more productive. And we've seen significant improvement in inventory gross margin return on investment through that type of analysis. the identification of those purchase triggers that I just talked about. We've seen significant lift in customer lifetime value of up to 23%. And one of the things that we've been really focused on, I was a retailer for many years, and it was always difficult to sell projects internally, especially when they had long implementation timelines, and also frankly recognizing that we're in a difficult economic situation, and so we need solutions that can implement and get up and running and start delivering ROI really quickly. And so we're really focused on how do we get in with a low-touch IT implementation in 4 weeks and really start adding value to the organization really quickly. The other thing I'll mention, which is a little bit more nascent in terms of our capabilities and generally just more nascent in the marketplace, is task replacement using generative AI and LLMs. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through the discussion, but we're doing some really interesting work in this space using this kind of latest wave of technology, and keen to talk about that in a little bit. We deliver these solutions through a robust UI, but we also have the ability to, if the retailer or CPG firm doesn't want to use our UI, we can bring the data to them in any fashion that they need. And then just a last slide here is just a high-level overview on our approach to really being kind of turnkey and getting these solutions in as fast as possible to start generating ROI. And this is our typical 4-week plan. So yeah, thanks for bearing with me there and allowing me to share Netail.
So Dr. Mark, first of all, bravo. Thank you for hitting it right off the park, because there is so much we hear about AI. And it's refreshing personally for me to know AI not for the sake of AI from the aspect of differentiators. And you got me when you said you can implement something like this in 4 weeks. I call it the instant gratification, right? The era we live in. So would love to double click on some of those aspects. So thank you for that insights. So Hiral, let me move on with you. First of all, congratulations. Congratulations. I saw the press release with Netail and the partnership. So you got me all curious as to what is this partnership and how this broadly fits into your strategy.
Absolutely, Sunder. So, if you look at Mastek, we do cloud implementations, we do digital engineering programs, we're a global company, we do digital experience, data automation, but even within our realm, the competitive orbit is so vast and is so different, even depending on the type of work that we do. Now you sort of apply that to what Dr. Mark was saying, and in one of our own customers, which is a women's apparel retailer, there's 7 million consumers and customers. There's almost 1 million, worth of data that gets analyzed daily. So in this sort of environment where personalization needs to be taken at a completely different level with real time, tons of data available at the fingertips, like you said, instant gratification, Sundar, there is a real need, right, to combine. And we've seen it in some of the projects that we've implemented, right? To combine the retailer data with a lot more curated competitive information, competitive pricing data. And it's not just the pricing, it's the whole gamut. Mark hit on assortment and supply chains. Many of our programs look at integrating with order management systems and supply chains. And so if you keep that in mind, the scale of the problem that we're trying to deal with is only possible with the solution like Netail. And it's very, very deep. It's very specific in a certain area. And we're just very excited because combined with some of Mastek's customers in the US and the Netail platform, we feel we're, we have the capability to do a scale of competitive analysis and personalization at a completely different level.
I think that's a great summary. And that leads me to my next question. And this is for you, Dr. Mark. How do you really see the benefit of implementing AI as it comes when you look at it through the lens of digital commerce, right? And how can businesses really leverage these benefits?
Yeah, I think the most significant benefits of AI in the digital commerce space really come from the ability to connect the dots on customer and competitor behaviors. There's just so much, and actually Hiral just mentioned it, there's so much data that the environment is so dynamic that it's just no longer possible, even with the largest human teams, to actually understand what's happening, let alone respond to that in real time. And so I think this is really where AI can help. I think the best and most practical applications of AI are doing that really well now. There's an example in terms of the work we do from a competitive intelligence perspective. We've estimated that the average retailer now has to track 1.6 billion data points annually just to understand their marketplace, let alone make decisions from that data. And so in terms of leveraging the benefits, I'd also kind of add maybe an important piece, because I hear very often that there are blockers to proceeding with AI, and very often it's like, I don't feel like my data is of sufficient quality to proceed with solutions, and why don't we just wait 6 months or wait a year and we'll be in much better shape. What I know is that even Google complains about the quality of its data. Everybody is frustrated with data. But I think, as they've proven and many others have proven, I think that the best path to leveraging AI and getting the best out of AI is actually just to get going with small trials. And I think that will give you, I think, better insights into actually where your data problems are if you just try to start using it. But you can also start generating benefits for your business, even if you can't get to the full benefits of your business. And as Hiral mentioned before, and this is where I love the partnership with Mastek, is from I think a data management and a deployment and an AI perspective. I think collectively we've got all of the bases covered to really help our customers really move through that AI transformation and data transformation as a collective team.
Interesting insights there, Dr. Mark, which just leads me to the question, and perhaps Hiral, you can help me out here, is when you look at the enterprises, most of them are legacy heavy. Some are native cloud born. So how do you really infuse, or what do you really see AI playing their role in the future of digital commerce, right? How do you really prepare businesses so that they can take it in, as Dr. Mark explained?
Yeah, so Sunder, you hit it on the mark. There is a different level of maturity depending on who you talk to, right? That's the reality of today, and that applies to every industry, but particularly even in the retail space. I mean, if you think about it, right? Netflix, I mean, their recommendations engine, which is also powered by AI, is probably worth like $1 billion per year, right? Just in terms of the impact it has, or we've seen enough examples of segmented campaigns. So there's a different level of maturity when it comes to certain industries. But going back to the basics, even when we look at the future, the attract, convert, and retain, the framework that Mark talked about earlier, doesn't change, right? Now, within that, as you're moving shoppers to loyal customers and consumers, you start looking at some of the nuances, right? I mean, in some of the engagements that we've done, and with retail and digital commerce and engagement, there is always third-party integrations. Most of our customers have multiple brands. There's always elements of churn. Fraud is a problem. So there is elements of not personalization is critical. Ultimately it's about improving sales and profits. But if you start looking at the lifetime value, some of these elements come into play, right? Just reducing the sheer amount of manual work involved and the inefficiencies that exist, to converting that data into much more actionable insights, whether that is churn predictions or fulfillment related supply chain visibility, or even product recommendations, right? In many cases, some of our clients are both B2C, B2B, or B2B2C, right? And so you're again amplifying the challenge of the data and the competitive intelligence. So as you look in the future, these would be some of the things to be looking at, right? Yeah, you can do it maybe for a single brand, a single location, a single region, But if you amplify the problem with third-party integrations, looking at multiple competitor personas, looking at churn, fraud, predictive analytics, the problem is much bigger. And so that's really what we're after.
So interesting. And Hiral, maybe I'll request you to double click on the inefficiency part, because that really caught my attention. And let me, I would quickly tie that to cost takeout focus, which every retailer today is doing. So how does the AI strategy fit into the broader cost takeout and tie it back to that instant gratification, not in 4 quarters down the line, but what can you do for me in next 30, 60, and 90 days in terms of rewards?
No, absolutely. I mean, clearly there is a macro level, situation that we are all kind of living in right now, and that applies to retailers, commerce providers, digital companies, even in today's kind of world of digital first consumer behavior, right? Elements of operating efficiency, automation is critical. If you look at some of the statistics that Dr. Mark shared earlier, just in the sheer volume of everything from click-through results to conversions, right? I mean, if you are able to improve 200% when it comes to conversions, if you're able to improve 15% in terms of profits, you can think of some of the impact that you're having both on bottom line as well as on top line, right? But the reality is, as we've tried to deploy some of these tools, we have seen that there's a lot of manual work. There's a lot of manual labor still that exists, and a huge opportunity to. So the AI deployment itself, like Mark was alluding to, itself is a whole new space where there's a lot more efficiencies that can happen. And of course, finally, that leads to lifetime value, that leads to loyalty, that even leads to, I mean, even if you go back to the attract phase, it leads to reduced customer acquisition costs, right? And if you kind of put that all together, right from forecasting and making sure you're getting the right inventory at the right price point at the right time in the right geography, there's so much there, right, where you can save costs in today's environment. So I think that's also going to be a big consideration. It's not just about AI for the sake of it, like you said. It's about looking at it holistically, Sunder.
Interesting. That I would love, Dr. Mark, for your comments, but let me get to a specific point where I would want your comments here, which is, you spoke about the attract, convert, and which was the third one? Revisit?
Retain, yeah.
Retain. So when you look at these 3 particular segments, where do you see AI playing a critical role? Because everybody's span of attention is shrinking. So where would you think you would place your bets on?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I've thought quite a lot about that over the last few years, especially as I've made this transition from being a retailer into the software space. And where should we develop solutions that are going to have the biggest bang for buck and ideally get the biggest uptake in the retail and CPG space? I actually think that there's a lot of software solutions already down close to the point of sale on the conversion side and that side, and that's great. But what I see is a really big leaky bucket in terms of the visitors coming to retailers, and in large part it's because the level of competition has grown exponentially over the last 5 to 10 years, in particular because of the way that consumers have shifted their primary purchase pattern to now doing that research and browsing online. That means that every retailer is now competing against thousands of options and brands that had chance to build like a store presence over 50, 60, 70 years. They're now side by side on a Google search with a startup or a mom and pop that's been around for a few months, and now the consumer doesn't really care. It's about like, what's the features of the product, what's the price of the product, how fast can they get it to me, and so it's leveled the playing field a lot, and it's expanded that competition, which has accelerated this leaky bucket problem. And so, long answer to your question, I fundamentally believe, and it's why we've largely pointed Netail into building this competitive intelligence and competitive insight solution, because it's a little bit futile to optimize a shrinking customer base. I think you've got to figure out how do you get the customers to come to you and then optimize once you're getting the right customers to you. And so we've really focused on building an AI solution to effectively address that leaky bucket problem.
That's interesting, the way at least you explain. And in the past couple of years, as we were going through the pandemic, everybody was focused on digital e-commerce and what have you. The shift really happened, and everybody now all of a sudden started focusing on the supply chain, or I call it the retail back office operations, if you may. So I heard you speak earlier about pilot and adopting generative AI. There is least resistance. So how do you think retailers will be open for these pilots, especially for the back office operations? What's your perspective on that?
I do, and in fact, we already have some projects underway in this area. I think probably with quite forward-thinking retailers, but there is huge interest in this space. Our chairman is Andrew Ng, and he actually just released a new course in the last couple of weeks on prompt engineering. And in the first week, he had over 300,000 signups to that course, which is, he's taught millions of people around AI. And I think this is the fastest growing course he's ever released. So huge interest in this space. That said, it's really early in this from a technology perspective. There's still a lot of work to do to train these new tools to perform exactly the way we're going to want them to perform from a business perspective, without them being effectively. The problem is we don't want them to be creative when we don't want them to kind of produce these outputs that are unpredictable. And in AI speak, generative means creative. And so retailers don't necessarily want creative outputs with their consumers. They want something that's going to produce a predictable output. And so we've been focused on this problem. We're actually having good success bringing together retail data sets, so that first party data, and then fine tuning these foundational generative AI models to build new tools for consumer businesses that I believe actually are going to change the way that customers perceive the brands that we're working with in a really positive way. I think we're going to take those brands to the next level with this technology. And if I can opine a bit more, I'd say that there's been a lot of debate on generative AI and the impact of ChatGPT longer term, and I've seen estimates ranging from it's going to be a somewhat limited scope, it's a bit of a fad, to oh my god, it's going to change the world. I've actually spent 6 months really down that rabbit hole, trying to kind of figure it out. We've been building solutions. Actually, at Netail, we've already embedded generative AI into our products. And my current belief is that this technology will disrupt every language-based task and the language-based output that every business in the world produces. And so this includes things like programming, legal services, marketing, customer service, presentations, language translation, business analysis, many more areas. For me, as I've spent the last 6 months really studying this, I don't think it's a question of how big the impact is going to be from generative AI and these LLMs. It's only how fast it's going to happen. And I would say, I think to your question, that those businesses who are currently unwilling to pilot this technology should take a deeper look. And I would suggest they consider, testing some of the new wave of applications that's coming out now, but are going to be, rapidly hitting the market over the next 6 to 12 months. I think if you look deeper and you look at the capabilities of even the current generation of solutions that are being built on top of ChatGPT-4 and Google Bard and some of those capabilities, I think you'll be surprised at the power that these new solutions will have. And they're only getting better from here. I really can't probably speak highly enough around what I think generative AI is going to do across the business world.
I would say, Dr. Mark, fascinating insights. And I think what you touched upon is not even the tip of the iceberg, right? We need an entire session just to double click on some of what you just shared in the last 30 seconds. So Mr. Hiral, what I cannot measure, I cannot appreciate, right? So how do you really measure the ROI on the investments, AI investments, especially as it relates to digital commerce? Can you share some of the metrics which you kind of very closely track?
Yeah, and for us, we align very closely with our clients and customers. So it is really it is more from the customer lens. But just Dr. Mark mentioned just the disruption. So it's almost like if you're not doing certain things about at least specific areas and processes, you're going to lose out very quickly. But in the end, the fundamentals, again, around revenue growth, around increase in sales, obviously with profitable growth is all important, right? And ultimately, that's kind of what our customers are looking at. But I think it's important to look at the next level metrics. We hit on some of them during the discussion, so I won't spend too much time and want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A. But I talked about the customer acquisition costs and the customer lifetime value. I think as you go through the value chain, there is quite a bit of detail around how that can truly make things efficient, but also help with growing sales and profitability. So I think looking at even starting to sort of measure that customer loyalty and retention, and this applies in a way to even stores, right? I mean, we're talking about digital commerce, but shrinkage or stockouts and so many other things that apply. I think that's really critical to look at. I mean, it's interesting that conversion. We've been talking about conversion rates forever, but now with this type of data and scale, it takes a whole new dimension. So just minutes or seconds is all you have, right? In some use cases, and so that would be another metric that our customers kind of look at, in addition to, of course, the convenience and the UI elements of it, right? So those would be some of the things that still hold good in terms of output. It is just the pace at which the expectation has changed.
Thank you, Hiral. So I have one more question for Dr. Mark. You kind of shared there is 1.6 billion data points right in your intro. So the question I have for you is, how do you really use the data analysis or the machine learning to really gain insights? Because I think that's really where the magic happens. You may have all the data. How do you really translate that into competitive intelligence, if you may?
Yeah, and so maybe I'll explain just how we solve this problem, and kind of we thought about it in kind of a sequence. And so we started actually by assessing the limitations of current solutions and their ability to get competitive intelligence data. And what we found was that effectively there are web scraping tools out there to go and collect data, but they lack the ability to collect and maintain that competitive data at scale. And so we solve that problem with a deep learning approach that allows us to identify all competitors of our business or our customers across the web, and then sustainably collect the data. So the first part was like, how do you even get the right data and sustainably collect it? And we had to effectively come up with a new solution to do that. The next problem to solve in this area was what we were seeing was that even once the web scraping companies collected this competitive intelligence data, it was effectively coming through like just a data dump, and there wasn't really any insight that sat on top of that data and produced value. So as we thought about it, we wanted to apply AI, and so what we do in that space is we take the retailer or CPG catalog, and we've got all of this competitive data. We effectively match the two. So we use AI and we match the two, so like a human would. So when a human's comparing and contrasting two products, they look at the image, they look at the title, they look at the price, they look at the description of the image. And what we've done is we've built an AI solution, a multimodal AI solution that looks at all of that data and then can grab all this competitive data. And for every product that you carry, we can find all of the competitive products, and that includes products that are exact matches for your product if you're buying commodities and stocking commodities, but it can also find similar matches. So it's really good for private label and even for fashion. And then on top of that, what we did was we built in a human in the loop, because we knew that at the limits of our AI training and labeling would always kind of keep the knowledge or the capability static. So what we built was a human in the loop that the users of our system and the experts in the category experts that use our competitive intelligence, they tell the AI when it does a good and a bad job matching those competitors and finding the competitors, and it gets smarter over time and more kind of replaces the ability to go and do that manual work and takes that pressure off the teams, and now gives them the data to do the analytics. And then that was the last piece. And I'm giving you a long answer to your question, but we then had to apply AI to the data that then we collected, we matched, so that we could provide pricing and assortment insights that would allow our customers to then outcompete and gain competitive advantage in the space. And so in particular, what we found is that the ability to incorporate competitive data, for example, into pricing decisions really improves the accuracy of those decisions for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. Without having competitive data in the pricing decision just doesn't make any sense anymore, given how consumers shop and the price comparison. And so from this, we can also measure how competitors impact your business. So for example, if a competitor puts on a promotion or changes their price, do you need to respond to them? Do you need to match? Are you going to lose consumers if you don't follow suit? We have the capability to actually measure that now with machine learning and AI in this space, which leads to much more profitable strategic decisions, but also more profitable tactical pricing decisions using machine learning and AI in this space. So hopefully that answered your question.
No, it does. In fact, two key takeaways for me. One is keeping the human in the loop. I think that's the critical aspect, right? AI is not something which happens in silos. It has to be in collaboration with humans. And not to digress, but having that empathy, I think that kind of takes it to that next level. So that brings me to my last question, perhaps to both Mark, you and Mr. Hiral, which is, for those who are watching this webinar today, what is your advice? I mean, we all know it all starts with the vision, small steps, relentless perseverance, and of course, leadership. But what would be your advice to someone who wants to start this now, and any lessons learned? Quick 30 seconds on each.
Well, maybe I'll go. Mark, feel free to add. I think we covered a lot of ground, and particularly the honing back on the 4 weeks comment that you pointed out as well, Sunder, right? These are not large deployments. We are not after large programs of multi-years. We're talking about days, maybe weeks at best. And so that would be, the biggest takeaway. The combination of Mastek, Netail with what we are looking at with some of our retail and commerce clients, it's very fast deployments on this platform to get some of the competitive advantages. So don't necessarily shy away from getting into it, because these are quick deployments with quick time to value.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and actually agree exactly with that sentiment. And for me, it's about getting going with these small steps. And so it's why we built our technology to get up and running really fast. And I'll use the kind of concept of earned knowledge, which is, you've got to learn, I think, through a hard school what works and what doesn't work. And so a lot of businesses feel like, okay, I need to put together like an AI strategy, and let me think about what that strategy is, and then I'm gonna kind of step forward from there. I think actually that's the exact wrong direction to go in. The right thing to do is actually start iterating. Take these small steps, work with startups who are iterating in this space, or companies who can get up and running fast with solutions like ours and Mastek, and start getting those wins and losses under your belt. Figure out like what works for your business, what doesn't work, where are the holes in your data. And then from there, once you've got that earned knowledge, you can then think about, okay, now what's the right longer term strategy? And then maybe to use kind of Hiral's point around kind of these larger implementations and maybe larger solutions that solve other problems. You can generate confidence to do that, but you need these kind of small iterative steps to build up to that point first. And so that's my recommendation, is just get going.
No, great way to summarize, right? It's never too late, right? Start small, start now, fail fast, as one would say. And fascinating insights, Dr. Mark. Hiral, thank you. I'm afraid that's so much time we have, but great insights, great story, and wish you all the very best.
Great. Thank you so much, Sunder, Hiral, and Mark. I do have a couple of questions from the audience, which I would like to get in front of you.
Sure.
Great. So I think this question has come in from Mark. It's actually two-part questions. It says, how can retailers build a strategy to identify use cases to pilot? And the second part of the question is, and how to determine if it can adopt it across retail landscape?
Yeah, so from a more strategic perspective, and we certainly can help partner together or think through, but I always think about like what are the quick win solutions. At the end of the day, what you want to do is build momentum for these types of solutions. I think everybody's talking about the application of AI, but a lot of people also maybe over the last 10 years have been burnt by AI. It was a bit like the snake oil that was a cure-all for everything. And I think it's really progressed a lot in the last few years, where there's really powerful applications that can really move the business. And so I think it's really looking for like where are there some quick wins? Are there some low-hanging fruit that the business is struggling with that we could think about? Like, is there a quick win of AI in that area that's not a big financial bet, but will get us moving and start to show some victories, and then it snowballs and builds momentum from there. So that would be my recommendation, but I'm certainly happy to dig deeper with whoever asked that question.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Mark. This next question is for Hiral. Does Mastek run any assessment to determine our business is good candidate for AI adoption?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we should have probably mentioned it. But our team, we have a very strong team, retail, consumer, commerce, experience experts. Of course, we leverage multiple technologies as well, whether it is Adobe or Salesforce or Oracle, and so there's a plethora of different things in terms of experiences from Mac alliances, some of the new generation technologies. But our combined team with Netail experts, we've done this for a few customers together, and we have a diagnostics tool that very quickly is able to determine and spot some of the use cases to the earlier question, and then also run that assessment. So it's again a quick hit within the same week. We deliver some of those prototypes and dashboards, so that at least the client is able to get a sense for, hey, this is the direction they want to. Worst case, they learn something out of it and apply it. So we're happy to kind of share some of those best practices with the customers.
Can I add on just very quickly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're fortunate to have Andrew Ng as our chairman, and he actually wrote like an AI transformation playbook that we use as well as we partner with Mastek, and so that's something I think we could probably share with participants afterwards, and actually that's a really good guide to getting started. And
that's a really great point, Dr. Mark. Andrew, for some of you who know, is authority in the space, chief scientist, multiple other roles, probably has 30-40 AI funds, and is a great thought leader. So and of course Dr. Mark himself is an authority in the space. So we're very fortunate to have this partnership, and Sunder, thank you for hosting us and asking those insightful questions, and enjoyed the discussion greatly.
Likewise, thank you.
This brings us to our end of the discussion. I would like to get one last question. I know we might be just a minute over, but this came in from a few of the attendees, and this is again for you, Dr. Mark. How has ChatGPT impacted AI strategy for retailers?
I think actually it's turned it on its head. And, I honestly am blown away by the capability. The more I dig in, the more powerful I realize it is. Now, it cost them $100 million to build the models. So it's not like, you know, we can reproduce easily, but we can build tools on top of, and it's a great foundation now for a whole new wave of technology that's coming. The real problem is going to be like, how do you bring in your data sets to use in the data? And we've actually been working on that. So we've had some success bringing in your external data. It's then fine tuning. It's the prompt engineering so that it doesn't produce creative outputs that you don't want, and it really produces the outputs that you do. But and that requires some test and iteration and again, it's still a nascent technology where we're figuring that out as we go. But the use cases, as I said earlier, are basically any language task, and actually I would also say, you know, any image-based task ultimately. So into marketing, into images. Ultimately, you're going to see generative AI in Hollywood and producing movies and TV shows. And I mean, it's pretty incredible where this is going. And I think it's fully going to disrupt the consumer-facing businesses. You know, a great example is actually interaction with consumers. I think is going to go to the next level using this technology as it matures.
Thank you. So I wanted to, at this point, thank all of our panelists, Dr. Mark, Sunder, and Hiral. And I also wanted to thank our attendees today. We will be sending out a link to a recording of this session. So look out for those. And if there's any additional questions you have, definitely please do reach out. We'll be sending out an email with additional information and the playbook that Dr. Mark mentioned by Andrew. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.